Welcome. My name is Kinetic Symphony. I'm a narrator focusing on glitch in the matrix stories. This is a compilation video of all my uploads in October. Let's get into it. First Story. Story title: Strange Song Coming from the Forest. Author name: Creatrix B. A couple years ago, I still lived with my parents in a very small town that consisted of only a gas station, post office, and a church, and many farm homes. It's a small town about 30 minutes from a military base. My parents' home is about a mile down a gravel road from the main highway, and only a mile from the center of the town where this church, gas station, and post office were. One night, we're hanging out on the front deck, while my little sister and her friends get some photos done in the front yard, seeing as we're about 2 acres of yard, and we're kind of in a bowl surrounded by woods. It's a beautiful place to take photos. It's about the golden hour, which is right before the sun goes down, and it kind of starts to get a little cloudy, like a storm is rolling through, but everyone is still outside, hanging out nonetheless. But as time goes on, it looks as if the storm is building up, and it's getting pretty windy. So we rush over and help the photographer and the girls gather up all the equipment and props they were using to take the photos. And by this time, it's starting to get dark anyways. Well, it starts raining a little, and the wind is picking up a bit, so all of the girls run inside, as does the photographer with the camera and whatever equipment they could all carry. But leaving a framed backdrop outside that me and my mother told them we would take down and put up in the rain so everyone else could get inside. So as me and my mom are struggling to disassemble the frame for the backdrop, while getting a little wet in the rain, we start to hear a faint sound through the woods, almost like music. Which wasn't very odd because right through the woods about a mile away was a highway, and right across the highway was a church. So it wasn't very strange that we would hear music or singing in that direction. So here we are getting the frame and the backdrop packed up and thrown into the porch. And from the first time we heard the singing or music, only about 10 seconds has gone by, and we heard it again. And once again, we don't think too much of it, and we're still going into the yard to grab any other random things left out, like stools or someone's shoes, etc. Well, another 10 seconds goes by, and once again we heard the singing. Which by now is a little bit louder, and we can now tell it is singing, and it's the same 4 to 6 notes over and over again. So it's like someone is singing a short tune over and over again, but only in ahs. So like Ariel, the Little Mermaid, would sing type deal. And so at first, like I said, it was so faint it sounded so far away, we really thought it was just the church. But at the end of the last note, it would restart back over to the first one, and this time it would be a little louder. Every time the tune would restart, it was a little bit louder, and sounded a little bit closer, like it was approaching us. By now we're finishing picking up all the stuff in the yard, and completely mesmerized by what we're hearing, this tune getting louder and louder each time it sung back over and over again. And to give you a visual, we're standing by the garage facing into the yard, which is about an acre long, and looking out towards the tree line, which through the tree line is, like I said, the church across the highway. It's almost dark, but still light enough to see the tree line, and this tune is getting louder and louder, slowly sounding as if it's coming closer and closer, but at this point, it definitely sounds like it's coming from inside of the forest and no longer from the church. Me and my mom start talking about theories. Okay, maybe there are people in the forest chanting this song or something, because where we live there have been reports of cult activity in the woods. So naturally this is both our first thought, if it isn't coming from the church. But one thing we can't explain is the sound of the voice is actually making. It doesn't sound like a group of people. It doesn't sound like 20 different voices coming together harmoniously, singing the same notes over and over again. No, instead it sounds like one person, neither male nor female. Yet it's almost as if one person has been cloned 20 times, and 20 of the same voices are coming together, harmoniously singing this tune. That's what was most creepy about this, and obviously the fact that this is happening at all is creepy as well. So here we are, almost paralyzed, staring at the tree line listening to this Ariel-esque over and over again, getting louder and louder as the same 20 voices start over the tune. By the end of the last note, it restarts, and when it does, it sounds louder and louder than before. After about 10 times of this mysterious song playing over and over again, getting louder and closer as it plays, it sounds as if the 20-person cloned singing group is right on the tree line, just standing behind the trees. And I don't mean I can physically see anyone, it's just the tune is so loud at this point, it's as if it's coming right from the tree line. Of course, as soon as the last note ends, it starts back over to the beginning and is even louder than before. And this time it sounds as if it's surrounding us, coming from all directions. Me and my mom are no longer paralyzed. We're now in fear and shock, and we both look at each other and sprint to the front door and shut and lock it, both in the kitchen now, breathing heavy. Looking at each other, trying to understand what we just experienced. We are completely and entirely frightened and also amazed. We both heard the same thing. The same exact thing, 20 cloned voices, neither male nor female, singing the same 4 notes over and over again. With every beginning of the tune it gets louder and closer, and eventually it's so loud it's literally surrounding us. To this day, me and my mom haven't found anything like it on the internet, nothing that even comes close to explaining what we experienced. It's like whatever we heard and experienced is so unique. But I've done so much research and still, years later, I can't explain any of what we heard. So here I am, typing this. So maybe I can find at least one person who's experienced something similar, or has at least read something that is similar to this experience. It's just one of the most mysterious things that ever happened to me, and the fact that my mother was standing with me hearing the exact same thing at least lets me know that I did in fact hear it, and it was real. Personal thoughts. Let's say that's a moving experience, very fascinating. So I'm accustomed to reading about audio glitches, mainly related to the hum, where there are people who are able to perceive of a low humming noise in certain areas of the world, but others can't. Equipment is able to pick up the sounds, but a source can't be determined. Your story is much more specific than that, because it's coming from what seems like a human being's voice. Your little sister and others that went inside, did they end up hearing anything at all, even faintly through the walls of the home? I wonder. It is possible that this was just an elaborate prank, that it was just a group of orchestral singers just having fun, but that doesn't seem very likely at all, does it? Now my mind does want to drift towards spirits, but then I've yet to hear of singing ghosts before, so I'm not sure. I hope someone else can relate to this and has some idea. Very interesting. Second Story. Story title. I was an inch away from my dad, then he got home 5 minutes later. Author name: Lost in Protease. This happened to me about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, and to this day I still can't quite say what happened. I was in my room. I was browsing the internet while I had a head of garlic roasting in the toaster oven in the kitchen. Then I heard my dad come inside, so I figured I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone and say hi to my dad while I went to check on my garlic. I walked out of my room and caught my dad halfway down the hall. I said hi and something along the lines of, "Gotta go check on my garlic." My dad simply replied with a quick hi and walked straight to his room. I didn't think too much of it, and just figured he had a long day at work. It should be noted that our hallway is narrow, and my dad is much bigger than me, so as I passed my dad in the hallway, I had to press myself against the wall just to squeeze past him. While I was in the kitchen, I heard the front door open. My dad's car started, and he left, which I thought was super odd since he had only been home for about a few minutes at this point. Again, I just brushed it off and went back to my room. About 5 minutes later, could have been sooner to be honest, the front door opened again, and it was my dad, except this time he was loud and energetic. He came in and immediately hollered out, "Is someone cooking? Something smells good." I came out of my room and said, "Yeah, it's the garlic, remember?" That's when he asked me what I meant when I said that he doesn't remember, and I explained to him that he had just been home, and I told him about the garlic when I passed him in the hallway, that he had just seen him a few minutes ago, and that he walked straight to his room. His demeanor immediately changed and he said, "What do you mean? I just got off the highway and pulled into the driveway right now. Are you telling me someone else went into my room?" I told him that I saw him go into his room. At this point, he was dead serious and went to his room to check for any missing items. At this point, he was under the belief that a home invader had come in and rummaged around his room. Once he was calm, I explained to him exactly what had happened, and even explained that the person I saw was even wearing the exact same outfit my dad was when he walked into the house. My dad was about as spooked as I was. To this day, I have no idea what happened there. At one point, we thought that maybe my dad had an absence spell or something, since he's had times before when he was driving where he forgets chunks of time. Although we couldn't explain then why he came in and then immediately left again, or how it was that my dad clearly remembered just coming off the highway before getting into the house, or where he could have gone in the few brief minutes between when he first left and when he arrived again. And to this day, the one part that still really creeps me out is just how close I had been to my father when I slipped past him in the hallway. If anyone has any ideas of what might have happened, I'm all ears. Personal thoughts. Yeah, so a lot of people would be freaked out by something like this, understandably so. But reading this, I just get excited. I'm not even sure why. The details are all there, and very clear. You saw your dad, and you couldn't mistake your dad for an actual home invader, given that you had to pass by him so closely in a narrow hallway. So, per your perspective, it absolutely was your dad. I assume nothing was missing, yeah? So it can't be some clever invader that somehow Mission Impossibled his way to your dad's room, with a mask of your dad or something. I think maybe this could be forward projection. Your dad's soul or essence, never a good word for what I mean, pushed himself forward a few minutes. Why or how, I have no idea. So another thing I just thought of. Some physicists have this hypothesis that the whole universe has already played out, that time itself is an illusion, or rather the progress through time is. Every frame of reality has already been imprinted. But the truth is, quantum uncertainty makes it impossible to ever predict the future. There can't be just one future. It's not a calculation problem either. Even the universe itself doesn't know. To better explain how it's so complicated, but okay. The universe itself doesn't know where and how fast a particle is moving. So particles are thought to be just, you could say, excitations of different fields. An observed particle is a field that's been interacted with, which collapses the waveform. And you could say the waveform more like uncertainty. In doing so, the universe decides in that specific moment of interaction the properties of that particle. There's no hidden variables baked in. Thus, there's no information to use to calculate one singular future. If we had godly knowledge and could measure every single particle that currently has their waveform collapsed, without affecting them, any measurement also requires interaction, which changes the properties of the observed particle. Even then, we couldn't predict one future, because all the particles that have not yet have their waveforms collapsed are there, in limbo, I guess, Even the universe doesn't know their properties yet. So God would be at a loss. So perhaps you managed to see a few future frames of a possible future. One where your dad was down, lethargic, removed. Maybe something bad happened to him at work in that future, but not the one you currently occupy. Sorry for the tangent there, kinda just poured out. I've always been fascinated with science, especially the world of the quantum, because it's almost ethereal. Or it's just maybe the fundamental processing layer of our universe, if it is a simulation. Third Story. Story title: A $10 bill turns to 20. Author name: Zombrizo. This happened to me today at work, and as soon as I did, I knew that I needed to post about it here. Now that I have the free time, I want to talk about something that left my coworker and I absolutely dumbfounded. To preface this, I want to say that I work in fast food on an assembly line where we make things in front of the customers. There's usually one or two of us in our shift, and luckily today I had someone there to confirm that I was not in fact crazy. As many of you know who work in fast food, it's not uncommon for customers to think their actual total is less than it actually is, or to try to short you. That happened today when a customer order came out to $16.56, and he only handed me a 10. I took the bill, but I told him that I still needed the $6.56. Mind you, my coworker was standing next to me, bagging his food. He reached into his wallet to grab another bill, but stopped and looked at me and said he gave me a 20. When I looked back down, well, what would you know? It was a 20. I was way confused, but I rang him up and let him leave and rushed back to talk to my coworker about it. Before I could even start, he said he had seen the guy only hand me a 10. I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. It just changed in my hand. We both talked about it and he told me that I should probably post about it. So here I am. I think that's all we talked about for the rest of our shift too, because it made us feel so many ways. I still can't fully grasp it though. When I tried looking at the cameras, I couldn't get close enough to see if it had been a 20 the whole time, but we both saw that it was just a 10 until it changed. It's not like anything had happened in between. I felt nothing at all, just a 10 that turned into a 20 somehow. I guess the customer was just lucky and everything was in his favor today. Who knows? Needless to say, I don't think I'll be able to stop thinking about it for a while. Edit. I've commented before on a post about a ring that kept coming back. Well, this has happened to me with my name work tag. No matter when or where or how I lose it, it always ends up back on my desk at home. It's like it's magnetized over the entire universe and it is always pulled back there. I don't know why, it's my job that follows me everywhere, but I just thought I should add this little detail. Personal thoughts. Yeah, that's a cool little glitch. Your coworker was there and saw it happen too. Exactly so. Otherwise I'd just have said, well, it's probably just a visual mistake. But with your eyewitness there, I can't say that. I'm guessing it's impossible to keep track of that specific bill at this point. Long gone in some bank vault by now. I wonder if it'll switch back into a 10. I also wonder if the customer who handed it to you saw it as a 20, then it morphed to a 10. Then right back to a 20 in the span of a few seconds. Or perhaps he was just a magician playing a little game on you. I've seen a few YouTubers do something similar to that. If it was a glitch, I'd sure love to figure out how he did it. Wouldn't we all? Show the video some love, hit the like button, and subscribe on up if you still haven't. I upload Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 PM EST. I'll see you all there. Fourth Story. Story title: My aunt was saved by a glitch in 2017. Author name: Pixie0321. There's a couple weird things to this story, and one is kind of a tech thing, so I hope there's a possible explanation. I was 16 at the time and remember it well. My aunt and now ex-husband had been out with a friend one night and were finishing up around 1 a.m. when their friend offered them a ride home. My aunt hadn't drank, but her husband and friend had. Everyone gets in the car and my aunt, who was notorious for never wearing seatbelts, starts to feel odd and buckles up. Her husband, already buckled, teases her about it since it's out of character, and their friend doesn't wear his to prove a point. As they're exiting the highway, the friend driving jerks and overcorrects, and they immediately roll off a fairly steep incline. They roll for what my aunt described felt like 5 minutes. Then suddenly she wakes up and everyone else in the car is passed out. She gets out, and according to her, wasn't able to get anyone else out. Within a couple minutes, emergency responders and my mom arrived to see my aunt and her husband outside the car, while their friend remained inside. Now, my aunt never called my mom, and there was no log on either phone that my aunt had called my mom. But my mom swears that she got a phone call and heard the car rolling over, and my aunt yelling, "He's dead, he's dead!" And then said something about the area the car accident happened. My mom got on the highway and drove in that direction until finding the accident, within 10 minutes of it happening. I remember my dad had heard the phone call too, and I remember waking up to my parents frantically trying to piece together who was going to go, and where to go, and sort through everything. We waited at home for my mom to return, eventually with the news that my aunt's friend had passed, but that her and her husband had survived with minor trauma. Later, my aunt talked about the intuitive feeling she'd had beforehand about the seatbelt, but she had questions about her phone, which is my question too. She remembers screaming, "He's dead," and that she was referring to her husband at the time. She said he had died there, and that she wasn't able to get anyone out, but that out of nowhere she was out of breath and kneeling over her unconscious husband right before the paramedics arrived. She lost her phone in the crash and was never able to find it. Edit. People have pointed out that I mentioned there was no call log on my aunt's phone, and that she lost her phone in the crash. I obviously misremembered that, but I do remember that the phone was lost. I also remember being told my mom used her own phone to try to call my aunt at the time, at the scene of the crash. And we were shocked when my mom came home and told us that she and my aunt had realized there was no incoming call from my aunt earlier that night. Personal thoughts. So this is a positive, well, mostly. I mean, it's very sad that the friend died, but at least her husband survived and she did too. And with minor wounds too, that's extraordinary. But these kinds of glitches, they give me a sense of, maybe hope is the right word. And it's clear when one reads enough glitch stories that, to some extent, we all share a connection that isn't yet understood. The most peculiar aspect to this glitch is that your aunt had a sense that she'd need to buckle up. But not in a vision sense. She'd had gotten out of the car entirely if it was a vision, knowing exactly what would happen. No, this seemed like just a sort of feeling she had. As you say, foreboding intuition. It's really a remarkable ability, and an extraordinary event. Regarding the phone though, I don't know, even if your aunt lost the phone, the call log can be still checked by the service provider. So maybe that's what your grandma did, or your parents, I don't know. Fifth Story. Story title: I witnessed my own car wreck 2 years earlier. Author name: Anonymous. Okay, I'm very reluctant to post this, as I've never told anyone, and I know that I wouldn't believe this if someone told me that it happened to them. But here goes. I was driving to work one morning. It was a 75-mile drive that I only had to make about once every 2 weeks. The road is 2 lanes on both sides, separated by a large grassy area. The speed limit was 65. This next part is very important. I'm the person who stops to help people all the time. If I see you pushing a car, I stop and ask if you need help. If your battery is dead in the Walmart parking lot, I'll ask you if I can help. I was driving to work that morning, and on the other side of the highway, I see a silver Kia Optima heading down the road, when all of a sudden, it looked as if something caused the wheel to jerk hard to the side, making the side walls of the tires catch the asphalt and cause the car to begin rolling. Like NASCAR rolling. I remember saying, "Holy crap," out loud, but I just kept driving. I don't know why, I didn't turn around. This really bothered me for about 2 years. Why didn't I stop? Well, about 2 years later, I was driving home in my newish used car, a silver Kia Optima, when I overreacted to a dog running across the highway. I tried to remain in control, but I didn't have a chance. I began rolling violently, but peacefully from my point of view. I knew instantly what was happening, and I wasn't even able to worry about the injuries I might sustain, because it seemed like minutia compared to knowing that I had seen myself wreck 2 years earlier. I somehow wound up escaping with only superficial damage to myself. I now think the reason I didn't stop was because I wasn't able to, like it would have thrown things off too much. Personal thoughts. Well, the word that pops to my mind right now is just wow. The thing is, and I've spoken about this before, quantum superposition makes it impossible to predict the future, especially the further out you go. So hearing stories like this just throws a wrench in the whole thing. Maybe we don't understand physics at the most fundamental level. Certainly we're missing a piece, because this would be like trying to predict the lottery a billion times in a row, getting the jackpot every time. Going so far into the future, 2 years, that is incredible. And of course you didn't know it at the time. But yeah, you didn't stop. Perhaps there was some kind of universal block in your mind. I don't know. This makes me think that we really do live in a simulation. I mean, that's the whole point for this subreddit, right? Glitches in the Matrix. I don't think everyone really believes, and that includes myself, that it's a simulation. But Elon Musk certainly thinks so, and I'm beginning to, the more I read this stuff. A simulation, or maybe, I don't know, maybe not a computer simulation. Maybe there's some kind of creator. It's not artificial in the sense that we think of like the Matrix. But I know something is going on that we don't fully understand. When you read stories like this, I mean, what other conclusion can you reach? You saw yourself wrecking exactly the same car, the same place, I imagine. And you knew you'd be okay, even though you didn't consciously know. Or you just couldn't help anyways, because the universe wouldn't let you. The universe wouldn't even let you think about helping. How's that for free will? I wonder what it says. I'm glad you're okay though, only superficial wounds. Given how wild you said the crash was, I'm surprised, but I'm relieved to hear it. Sixth Story. Story title: You're Supposed to Be Dead. Author name: Mad Cricket, 2 Ds. Just a little over a year ago, I got word that a donor, we'll call her Sarah, of mine passed away in a big vehicle accident. It was on the news. She passed with her daughter. It was on her daughter's birthday too. God, that's terrible. I went to her vigil, but turned down going to the actual funeral because I felt like I didn't know the family that much, and I would have been a stranger there. All deaths of my donors hit me pretty hard, because seeing them twice a week, every week, they kind of become your family. At least I see them more than my own family. It's not just anyone that lets you stick needles in them. Oh, and by the way, these are blood plasma donors. Anyways, I went to the grocery store right next to my work today after I got off work, and was waiting in a very long line, speaking with another donor, who also lives near me, so we're catching up on our outside lives, when I see a familiar face walk in. I thought to myself, oh look, it's Sarah, as she walked by and waved. Her eyes lit up as if she was smiling. Let's not forget we're all wearing masks. And she said, "Hi, Mad Cricket," as she walked past me and down the aisle. Then it hit me that I just saw a woman who was supposed to have passed a year ago. She does have sisters, but all of them donate, so I know each one. And this was definitely Sarah, not a sister. I looked down the aisles as I left the store, and I didn't see her. I waited outside my car on the verge of tears, and shocked beyond all hell for almost an hour, wanting to catch it on video, and she never appeared. I texted my coworkers that also knew her and explained the situation. They just gave one-word replies. I don't think they believed me. That happened a few hours ago, and I seemed to forget about it until something of it struck my memory, and once again I'm in a shocked, near-tears state. She had a very unique face. Never seen anyone else resemble it. It's just a very strange feeling, seeing someone who's no longer supposed to be on this earth, in physical form at least. This feeling is just surreal. Personal thoughts. Oh man, this is a heavy story to read. I'm genuinely sorry for your loss. And I mean that as you say, she was basically family to you. So I'm curious, when you saw her, was she shopping? I mean, did she have a cart or a carry basket? I'm thinking, if it was a manifestation of her spirit, a ghostly echo or however you want to call it, she wouldn't be interacting with physical objects. If she was carrying something or pushing a cart, then that put another twist on the experience for sure. Especially since it's clear she did know you, so it's not just some fluke lookalike. Edit of my own personal thoughts. So the author, Mad Cricket, responded to my comment on the post, saying that she was not pushing anything. So I don't know, maybe it really was her spirit, just popping in to say hello one more time. Seventh Story. Story title: I think my day restarted today. Author name: Elite Trooper 7. A bit of background. I've gotten a strange sleep pattern lately, often sleeping all afternoon and waking up at night. So this morning I had been awake since 10 p.m. and stayed up until everyone in the house was awake. The sun rose and I felt it on my face. It only shines through my window for a short time each morning. I stayed up Sunday morning until I decided to go to sleep, as usual lately at around midday. After what felt like an 8-hour-long sleep, I awoke, surprised to see the sun. It shined brightly on my face. Instead of midnight, I had woken up at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. Sunday morning, the same day. My family then got out of bed, which has led to some confusing conversations. Maybe I'm just sleep deprived and confused, but I swear I woke up before I went to sleep. At least my sleep pattern is normal again, I guess. Edit. Again, something that may not be a glitch, but usually my dad is borderline abusive to me and my mother, often terrifying my little brother, and my mother will make us breakfast in the morning. This morning, my dad has been strangely nice to me, the way my mother usually is, and made us a great breakfast. He can't even cook usually. My mother acted like my dad, becoming extremely aggressive without reason and scaring my little brother. Hopefully this is just a weird day, and I haven't entered a parallel universe or something. Personal thoughts. So there's a lot of talk in the glitch community about parallel universes and quantum immortality. When you jump from one mind to another, of course it's only a hypothesis, and who knows how the process would work. Are all of our clones in alternate universes connected to us in some way? Perhaps akin to how particles can become entangled. I'm just talking out loud here, but it fascinates me. About your glitch specifically, it's entirely possible that you were just sleep deprived, and ended up in a haze for a couple days, waking up at the time your mind fooled you into thinking you were going to sleep. Definitely a strange situation though. And then your mom and dad acting differently. That does point to a crossover, perhaps. Have you noticed anything else out of place? Let us know. Eighth Story. Story title. There was this weird experience I had where I felt like there was a glitch that allowed me to see what was coming down the road. Author name: Sita 2000. Okay, so about 4 years ago, I had a very weird experience that has stuck with me ever since. I was driving home from work, and it was about 4 AM. It was pretty much just me on that road, at that hour. I have driven on this exact route many times, and I've never seen a deer, especially since this particular stretch of the freeway was far away from the mountains where most of the deer tend to reside. But as I'm driving, I feel like things slow down, and then all of a sudden, I see a part of the road that I'm not actually going to reach for a few minutes. I see a doe walk out of some trees on the right side of the road, look in my direction, and then slowly walk off to the left side and disappear off into some shrubs. In an instant, the view in front of me changed back to where I physically am on the road. As I approached the place I just had this vision of, I decided to slow down since I was going about 70 miles per hour and figured if a deer is truly going to cross, I should prepare. And sure enough, I get to that particular stretch of road and the deer walks out of the trees, looks at me, and wanders off into the shrubs on the left, exactly how I just saw it a couple minutes before. If I hadn't have slowed down, I would have had very little time to react and probably would have hit that deer. So I asked this author if his ability ever manifested since then, and he replied, "There have been a couple other times where something similar happened. A few years ago, my family was going to a large park downtown for a holiday celebration, and I was going to join them. But the image of a gun popped into my head, and I got a weird feeling about there being a shooting, so I decided to stay home. I told my family that I felt uncomfortable with going, and they just thought I was weird. I didn't try to convince them to stay home because, well, I thought maybe I was just having some anxiety. A few hours later, I got a call from my mom saying that a couple people got into a fight, and one of them started shooting with no regard to all the other people around. Luckily, no one was injured. Usually this park is very family friendly, so for there to be a shooting is very unusual. This next one is kind of embarrassing for me to admit, since it's a bit silly. I was out of state for an internship when one of my aunts passed away. My mom had called me to discuss some of the funeral arrangements, and then randomly asked, "Guess who the bishop looks like who is going to lead the service?" At that moment, a very clear image of the comedian Jim Gaffigan's face appeared in my mind, so I blurted it out. "Jim Gaffigan?" My mom paused and then asked, "Yes, how do you know?" She hadn't given me any clues, and I hadn't thought about that comedian in a long time, so it seemed so random that I would somehow know that. The scenario wasn't as important as my other experiences, but it was just as clear. Personal thoughts. You know, these premonitions bewilder me because I go back to quantum uncertainty. There's no way to predict the future because there is no singular future. I mean, there shouldn't be anyways, as we understand physics. At the fundamental particle level, everything is uncertain, even to the universe. But also that this chaos is exponential with time. So, the further into the future you go, the less accurate a single prediction can be. It's the same reason that weather forecasters just can't reach anything close to perfect accuracy, especially after 3 to 4 days. That seems to be the cutoff where it's more of a coin flip. In your case, it was just a few minutes ahead, so it makes sort of sense. But still begs the question of how on earth you're able to do this. Incredible ability. Ninth Story. Story title: I could see myself talking in the mirror. Author name: Egypt_25. Hi all. First time poster here. I couldn't ignore these two things that happened to me on the same day. 1. I have a cheap Fitbit style watch that I wear all the time. About 2 weeks ago at work, I walked into a wall. I'm clumsy, that kind of stuff happens all the time. The watch scraped against the wall, and I got a deep etched scratch right down the center of the face of it. I was really annoyed and resigned myself to the fact that, well, I probably was going to have to buy a new one. This past Wednesday, having been looking at the scratch every day for 2 weeks, the scratch just wasn't there anymore. There is no evidence that it ever was there, but I know it had been. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy I don't have to buy a replacement, but it's messing with my mind a little. 2. Just after I discovered the disappeared scratch, I was in the pub. We were sat in a booth that had one mirror behind it. I was opposite the mirror, but had turned to say something to the person next to me. I turned back to facing the mirror when I caught my reflection lagging. My head had turned back, but my mouth was still moving. Now I'm pretty sure the second can be explained by the fact that I was tired and just seeing things, but I don't know about the first, or both of them combined. Personal thoughts. So I asked the author a few questions. This is what I asked, and this is what he answered. So reading the comments on this post, I'd ask if the scratch you saw on the watch was possibly just paint fragments embedded in the watch, which eventually crusted over and fell off. It seems like a possibility. If you're certain it was an actual abrasion on the watch itself, then that's definitely an unsettling glitch. The alternate reality is often on the table, but the mirror glitch as well makes it feel less of a certainty or related to alternate universe theory. You say you've been tired. Perhaps the simplest explanation is a lack of sleep, causing visual anomalies. Although you did say the scratch was there for 2 weeks, and then it just wasn't. So it seems like more than sleep deprivation too. The author's response. I thought that it was probably a chip of paint on the face too, but I could feel that there was a deep scratch, like when you run your finger over it, or put your fingernail in it. It feels deep, embedded, like a tiny fissure. I'm pretty sure the mirror glitch was a neural misfire of some description. I have had some neurology issues in the past, and have a few sleep disorders, so it's not entirely out of the question. I'm not sure that either of these things are actual glitches. It was just notable that they both happened on the same day. So back to my opinion, yeah, I don't know. They could be related to just not getting enough sleep. But again, the fact that you saw that the scratch was there for 2 whole weeks, that's what's bugging me. If it was just 1 day, that would be different. Show the video some love, hit the like button, and subscribe on up if you still haven't. I upload Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 PM EST. I'll see you all there. 10th Story. Story title. Nobody remembers that a client was terminally ill. Author name. Ami LJ. So I know this is a very generic glitch and all, but I really would like to try to write it down. I, 19 female, work in a nursing home where we deal with clients that are at their last stages of life. Therefore, it wasn't very weird that it was announced that this particular client, I'll call her Jane Doe, was now terminal. Terminal for us means morphine, bed rest, and guiding them gently through the last days and weeks of their life. Now the nursing home that I work at has 4 different sections, and I work a bit of everywhere. It's been about 2 months since I had to work in the section where Jane Doe was at. When I worked there 2 months prior, I remember everyone was talking about her. Family was allowed to come despite the virus rules, so they could say their goodbyes. Jane Doe herself refused to eat or drink anything. Now yesterday, I worked at that section again, and lo and behold, when I arrived, Jane Doe was sitting in her wheelchair in the living room, chatting, eating, and drinking. Now don't get me wrong, I was happy of course. She's the sweetest woman, and you can have a great conversation with her. I went to talk to her. She seemed good and healthy as you can be at 98 with dementia. Later that day, I said to 2 of my colleagues that I was super happy she had recovered so well, and that I honestly never expected her to. They were confused. Neither of them could recall she had been ill, nevertheless terminally so. I held my ground, looked up the last date I'd worked in at that section, and we checked the date in our record system. Nothing. 5 coworkers and a second check in the system later, and I'm still the only one who remembers her being ill. But I'm still 100% certain it was her. and that she was most certainly terminal. I wrote in her log in her room that she refused to eat. I was taught how to place a morphine butterfly on her leg, and I was the one who let her family in late at night, and they specifically said they were coming for Jane Doe. And I couldn't have confused her with anybody else because she has a very particular way of speaking that I distinctly remember. I'm hoping I remember it wrong and she never was ill. I really wish that for her, but I certainly don't remember it that way. Personal thoughts. So I'm curious, when you say that you checked the log for that day, what does it record? Exactly who goes to see her, treat her? What procedures or medications are given? Is there an electronic log involved too? I'm also wondering if her family went to see her. Is there any way to contact them to verify that she had been ill and successfully recovered? I don't know if that's possible, maybe frowned on to contact their family. You also wrote in her log that she had refused to eat. And this is still written down, yeah? I don't know how detailed the log access is in your facility, especially given the records are about 2 months old by now. But if indeed what you wrote was there, it genuinely happened, were you the only one to treat her back then? Let us know. 11th Story. Story title: Bakery Out of Business. Or was it? Author name: Durbeck von Wyman. Okay, so there was this bakery in the center of town that many of my colleagues and I have bought pastries at. It had been there for years. One day at work last year, everyone at work was commenting on how the bakery had gone out of business, and how disappointed everyone was that it had closed down. Driving by the storefront, the bakery was closed, dark inside, business space for rent signs on the windows, and the bakery sign was taken down. Day after day I drove past the spot, dark, for rent signs, bakery signs gone. After about 6 months, I happened to be driving by and saw the sign was back up, and the bakery was back in business. The next day at work, I commented to some colleagues about the good news that the bakery had returned and was back in business. Everyone looked at me strangely, and one of my colleagues asked me what I meant by back in business. I reminded them how it had closed and had gone out of business. They informed me that the bakery had never been out of business and never closed, never been empty, sign had never been taken down. I am absolutely positive that I saw it dark and empty, with 4 rent signs in the windows and the bakery sign gone for a period of months. I heard all those people talking about how it had closed down and how disappointed they were. That bakery was closed, out of business, and it was gone. And now somehow I'm the only one who remembers it. Personal thoughts. Was the name of the bakery exactly the same before it shut down, and after it reopened? At least from your perspective. So indeed this does sound like another crossover experience. Have you noticed anything else out of place, unusual? Are all of your friends and family behaving exactly the same way? And I do mean exactly. Even the tiniest details like what their favorite foods are, their favorite colors, all of that. They can be important clues in the discovery process. You want to confirm this is still your reality. It's also possible that this wasn't a full crossover, but just you peering through to the other side, somehow. I'm always so damn confused by these kinds of visions though. I mean, in all of the other stories of them that I've read, there doesn't appear to be any solid catalyst for them. I mean, what triggers them? Why did you experience it but not your friends and family? And why would a bakery of all places be the only thing that seemed different to you? And that concludes the 2 Glitch in the Matrix stories for the day. If you enjoyed my narration of them, then be sure to like the video. And absolutely subscribe for more, 3 times a week. 12th Story. Story title: My friend and I sometimes know what the other one is thinking. Author name: Banana Bandanas. My friend and I live in different countries, and he is much older than I am. He was a family friend when I was growing up, and he's always been there for me. My family has disbanded a bit, and since many years, I'm the only one in touch with him. When I lived in the country he's from, we'd celebrate holidays and such together. We do speak on the phone or by Skype at least once a week. We are very close as you can be given the distance. We noticed a few years ago that there was some sort of connection between us. I'd have a dream that he was telling me about a specific piece of artwork. In real life, he'd have been to an art exhibit with this exact piece on display. Recently, it's been much more intense. As I started seeing someone new, I reflected one day on whether my attraction to certain physical attributes shifts during my menstrual cycle. Not sure why, but I entertained the thought. My friend and I had a scheduled call that evening. Out of the blue, he asked me precisely that question in the beginning of the call. No context whatsoever. We've also experienced feeling ill when the other person is. I will be, unbeknown to him, in bed with a fever, and he will experience fever symptoms without the temperature. This has happened several times. Last week I was gripped with intense grief that almost made my hands tremble. Just strong emotions that I felt was difficult to manage. At the same time I heard church bells, like inside my mind, over and over. I had a feeling it might have to do with my friend, so I called him the next day. Turns out, he had visited the family of a relative that had just passed away. It was a tough visit, but they laughed a lot over how the man in question was at war with the local church over very loud church bells. He had once managed to barricade the doors to the bell towers to keep the staff from ringing them. Now there are a lot more examples than just these, but these are what came to my mind. In the beginning we found these spooky, but now they're really just common enough that we just accept them for what they are. A truly special connection between us. Personal thoughts. Oh, I absolutely believe you when you say there are many other examples to the ones you described. It does strike me as some kind of lifetime connection between you two. And now I assume by family friend, early on you wrote, you mean you both grew up together in the same physical area, but you or he moved away. If so, I do think in some way your minds synced up in those upbringing years. I think it has to do with how our minds process information as we're young. There's just more acceptance of, I don't know, it's almost like when you try to connect your phone to a Bluetooth device, and it's not the right version. I think when we're young, we're more simpatico, if that makes any sense. Just a thought. So maybe this, in some kind of unknown mechanism, allows a form of mental entanglement. I'd actually argue that this isn't even much of a glitch, as it's more of a feature of the universe. We just haven't properly studied or quantified yet. But it's incredibly interesting. So how does it feel to have a literal universal connection with someone? I would really like to know. 13th Story. Story title. One of my cousins died, and I'm the only one who can remember. Author name: Joseph Stalin. Well, hello Reddit. So this is my first post here. And before I start, whatever I'm about to say is 100% the truth. This is not a troll. I'm just a guy trying to look for answers, because I'm honestly just stuck. I'm using an alternate account because some of my friends and family sometimes go through my main one, and I don't want them to think I'm any more crazy than they already think I am. So basically this is what happened. When I was younger, I remember hearing that one of my cousins died in a drowning accident. At that time, I was shocked and I didn't really fully digest the situation. He was young, about 20 years old, and hearing about his death really did something to me. I remember going to his funeral and watching him get buried. But as with everything, life went on and we moved forward. Now years later, I read an article that a local teenager died in our area, and for some reason that immediately made me think of my cousin. I told my mom about it, and she said she had no idea what I was talking about. I kept pestering her, telling her that it is true, and I remember going to his funeral. Then she said, "Well, what was his name?" And that's when it hit me. I don't remember his name. I don't remember anything about him. All I know is that he was 20 years old and he died in a drowning accident. I can't even remember where he was buried, even though I could distinctly remember attending his funeral and his burial. I asked some of my relatives too, and they don't know what I'm talking about. They all told me the same thing, that I have no cousin who died in a drowning accident. I'm still trying to piece everything together, obituaries, some articles, anything that I could find. But so far, I found nothing. It's like he was erased from the face of the earth. Hell, I don't even remember his name, only his death. Is there some sort of explanation for this? Did I really have a cousin who drowned? False memories? Am I just going crazy? I do know that schizophrenia runs in our family, and I hope to God I don't have that. But this whole ordeal just makes me feel wrong. What do you guys think? Update. I just asked my little brother about it, and he said that it sounded familiar. Like me, he too can vaguely remember a cousin of ours drowning. Does this mean we both share a false memory? Could that be possible? Also, as I was delving into this little rabbit hole, I can now recall some other bits of information. I remember that he drowned in a river. I wasn't there at that time, but I remember that's what my relatives told me during the funeral. He was on a trip and he drowned in a river. That's basically it. He also had a 2008 overgrown emo haircut. I can't for the life of me remember his name though, and this has been bothering me so much. I should ask my brother some more in case he can remember anything. I'll give an update if anything comes up. Personal thoughts. Okay, well I have a little idea to try to confirm your memory. You don't need to know his name since you remember roughly how old he was and how he died. I believe that kind of detail is included in obituaries. How many 20-year-olds die in a town per year? I mean, it can't be more than a handful, right? You said that you don't remember exactly where he died though. Maybe you can limit it to a specific state. If you could, then you might be able to narrow down the search. If you could find out where he died, or was supposed to have died. If this isn't possible, or you just can't find anyone who died like that back then, I'm not sure. It's always a possibility that you're in a parallel universe. There are so many crossover events this year, it's making me wonder if something big is happening. That concludes our story for the day. I know you enjoyed it, so leave a like, I really appreciate it. And if you want more, subscribe on up. 14th Story. Story title. This literally just happened 2 minutes ago. Author name. Anonymous. Alright, so I'm at this pizza spot as I'm typing this. While I'm waiting in the parking lot for the pizza, a car rolls up on the side of me. Okay, nothing weird at all. But for some reason, I couldn't stop looking at the girl who was driving the car. She looked super sad, like she was looking for something, but nothing and no one was in the car except her. I look away and then look back at her, and suddenly her car is filled with people. It tripped me out so much that I thought I was crazy. I looked away and looked back again, and the car was gone. I'm tripping out right now. I don't know what to say. I don't smoke or anything like that, and I don't think I'm crazy. So I'm really confused about what I just witnessed. Edit. When I looked away and looked back, it didn't take 3 minutes or anything like that. I glanced away, and then looked back at her and her car. Edit number 2. Just to be clear, the person wearing the mask was the front passenger, and the person smiling was the driver. Personal thoughts. Reading this, the word that comes to mind is ghostly. Perhaps she had recently lost loved ones and they were there with her trying to comfort her. Perhaps you somehow peered across the veil for a split second. The other people in the car, did they seem normal to you? They didn't look otherworldly or anything like that. Did it seem like they were talking with the driver at all, that she noticed them? I asked these questions to the author, and they replied that they were just there, not moving or anything, just there. The only other person who had a facial expression was a girl that was driving, and she was smiling all of a sudden after looking really sad when she was alone. Per my own thoughts on that then, I would definitely say, that seems like they knew each other. They had somehow suddenly died, and they were there trying to comfort her. It's sad, but it's beautiful in a way. Well, I hope that's what it was, and not a haunting. But it doesn't strike me like that because she was smiling after. She didn't feel scared or nervous. 15th Story. Story title: Unexplainable Phenomenon in My New Apartment. Author name: Blar Blar. I just moved into a new apartment a couple months ago. In my bedroom, I have a king-size bed against the wall, and there are no neighbors on the other side of that wall. Also, it's on the top floor. The only other people that sleep on my bed are me and my 2-year-old son. My son always sleeps in the middle, and I usually sleep on the outside part so he doesn't fall off. The other day, my son is sleeping next to me and I'm just chilling on my phone when I hear this scratching. It's next to my son, and it sounds exactly like someone scratching their leg or something. It's otherwise completely silent in the room. I look at my son and he's completely asleep on his back, with his arms up next to him. I'm racking my brain, trying to figure out where the sound is coming from. I'm listening hard to make sure I'm not crazy. It's not the wall, it's not the floor, it's not outside. I 100% hear someone scratching their leg. It was dark, but I almost thought I even could see the imprint on the mattress of someone laying there. I dismissed it because, there had to be some other explanation, right? Then it happened again, but this time it was coming from towards the top of the bed and a slightly different sound, like someone was scratching their head. I started getting a little freaked out, but this is a newly remodeled, nice apartment. There's no way it's haunted. And then it stopped. A couple days passed by, and my hip started hurting, so while putting my son to sleep, I had laid on the other side of the bed by the wall. Once my son fell asleep, I was on my phone when I had a chilling realization. I heard the scratching sound again, but it was me. I was itching my own head. A second later, it hit me that the day before, I could have sworn my leg was also itchy, and I was itching my leg while on my phone, but I didn't make the connection. I also realized that these instances all happened at the exact same times. I know it's the weirdest thing, but it genuinely felt like a glitch and I don't know how to explain it. It was like I heard or saw myself there 2 days before I was there. I just can't explain it, and I still think about it. Personal thoughts. Reading this, I feel more spooked than unsettled by a glitch event. I'm not sure why, and I don't want to scare the author. I don't know about a haunting event, and maybe it's because I've been rewatching Supernatural lately, but it gives me demonic vibes. Something to do with scratching and how it feels like it's from your own head. You're the one scratching yourself, but you didn't even realize it. As in, not in control of your own body. I also asked this small question to the author, just in how does he feel in general, outside of this glitch or paranormal event. And they responded that they love Supernatural too, but they feel just weirded out because they sense someone there. As they stated before, that they felt like there was an impression on the bed. But that would just be impossible, right? It's probably nothing, but maybe just have some holy water hanging around, just in case. 16th Story. Story title: I saw my husband, but from the future, I think. Author name: Hekaruni 1288. I live in a very small town. We have a small grocery store, hardware store, you know the drill. I was done getting groceries and hopped into my car to head home. As I pulled up to the end of the driveway of the store, I turned my blinker on to get to the main road. I see a big, white, lifted Chevy pickup driving towards me that I needed to wait for. I watch it as it drives closer to me, remarking to myself that it looks so similar to my husband's, just older and rusted around the edges. It even has the same black emblem and large iron cross bumper. As the truck goes past me, my jaw nearly fell open. Staring at me intently was a man almost identical to my husband, but with a longer graying beard and gray hair around the ears. I quickly gathered myself together and pulled out behind the truck and up to the stop sign that followed. He was still staring at me in his side mirror, glancing away and then staring at me again. He took off like a shot the first chance he got, and I tried to follow to see which direction he took, but a car was coming and I couldn't get out behind him in time. The truck sped off towards my road, but I don't know if he turned in that direction or not. I know that's a little crazy, but I couldn't help feeling the total connection I feel with my husband when I saw his reflection in that side mirror staring at me. It gives me goosebumps to think about it, because it was like he knew that it was me, and I was the wrong age, and that he needed to get out of there before I could follow. I got home and my husband was there, working in his wood shop. I told him about it and he chuckled and asked if he looked hot when he was old. I mean, he did if it was really him. Personal thoughts. Well, that's interesting. It's a mild and kind of touching glitch. I wonder if then in the future your husband is driving around, if he'll experience this glitch in reverse, from his perspective witnessing his wife in the past. Sort of how you described that he thought he was seeing his wife, or at least someone he knew, from your own perspective. You know, he was looking at you in the rearview mirror, and he bolted away as quickly as he could, maybe spooked. At any rate, it's one of those experiences you just can't forget, and it's awesome that your husband is in good spirits about it. 17th Story. An ambulance or police siren started off far away, but ended up in my room. Author name: Shawnee C. As I write this, my eyes are watering, much like they do when you remember something very unique or scary or emotional that happens in your life. I was sitting in my room, watching a recording of Chicago Bulls game, when I hear a siren in the distance. It's about 1 in the morning. It sounded like a police car or ambulance. I didn't think too much of it, but it begins to get closer and closer. I peek out of my window and see nothing. I still hear it though. A couple seconds later, it's literally coming right next to my window. I mean, I can hear it clear as day. I'm almost scared to look outside because I can feel the presence of something outside my window. I was not under the influence of anything, and I'm a pretty logical guy. Anyways, I look out my window and see nothing. I still hear it. I live in a flat suburban neighborhood, no mountains or hills or big buildings to echo sounds. I think I'm hearing things and trying to explain it away, when the sound jumps from the outside to inside my room. I don't know how else to explain it. The sound ran for another couple seconds, and then disappears. I immediately look out my window again, and I see nothing. It was not a toy, it was not a recording. It sounded like every siren I've ever heard, starting from a distance and slowly getting louder upon approach. The outside of my room is fenced in, so I would have heard someone jump my fence if they were playing a prank on me. The whole time I had an uneasy feeling, and when the sound was in my room, I got body chills. I'll never rule out the logical, but I went outside immediately after looking out my window and saw nothing. Quiet neighborhood like always. I didn't hear a car drive away, see any lights whatsoever, or hear anyone. personal thoughts. There's something about our auditory channels that interacts with the brain on a deeper foundational level. Evolution made sure of that. We pick up on patterns and sounds clearly and sharply, because if we didn't, we'd have been lunch for some ancestral predator. So any glitches surrounding sound will be more impactful. In your case, I'm wondering who you live with. Alone? Do you have any roommates that might be playing a movie or something that could relay a sound effect of that nature? You say it's a flat neighborhood, so no apartment complexes or anything, no one above or below you. No one behind you either then, just the backyard I guess. And wouldn't result in that kind of sound inside your own room. I'm a bit stumped. Maybe... Do you have a laptop or computer in your room? Maybe some kind of signal was pushed through your phone somehow. Kind of grasping at straws. Do you know any of your neighbors? I'm wondering if you could ask them if anyone else heard the siren. If everyone heard it, then at least you'll feel less crazy. 18th Story. Story title: I think I just became the background character for another person's glitch. Author name: The Karma Don't Matter. This technically happened last night, but I was just starting a graveyard shift and I'm only now getting it all down. I work at a gas station chain with only numbers in its name. We're just outside of a large chunk of suburbs, none of that middle of nowhere stuff. Like we aren't exactly near any other businesses, but we are rarely completely dead for hours at a time. It was just past midnight, and with everything going on in the US right now, not a lot besides gas stations and bars are open anymore at night, so it was a slower evening. I was the only one in the store, and a car pulled up to one of the two double-sided pumps out front. Pretty standard white 4-door. I'm not great with car brands, but it was a little nicer, like upper middle class and probably only a few years old. A woman gets out and starts walking towards our door, like she's in a daze. Legitimately, this woman looked like she saw a ghost. She wanders up, sort of freezes at the door for a second, with a 1,000-yard stare, before opening it and coming in. She didn't go looking for anything, didn't start shopping, just sort of stood inside for what felt like ages. Again, the bars are still open, so I think, well, maybe she's just a little drunk, or had a rough night or something, so I give the usual, "Welcome to gas station. Let me know if you need any help finding anything." And she finally notices me, and immediately asks me the weirdest damn question I have ever been asked on the job. "You can see me, right?" "Yeah?" Like, what else would you say? She breaks down crying in the middle of the store, so I'm already heading around the corner to see what's up. I have my cell phone out in case I need to call the cops or something for her. I get her to sit down on a nearby pallet of soda, and I'm grabbing her a bottle of water. After she catches her breath a little, she tells me, "I thought I had died." Again, I'm thinking maybe she's on something, but she's a middle-aged woman who looks like a standard local suburban housewife. We're a pretty boring township without your average junkies like you'd find closer to the cities. She asks if she can call her husband to pick her up, and also wait with me in the meanwhile. She has her own phone and does so, not really telling him anything either, just where she's at and if he can come get her. He says he'll call an Uber and be there as soon as possible. We're waiting, and so far nobody else has showed up, so I'm keeping most of my attention on her, and eventually she starts to explain to me. "I was driving home from dinner with my coworkers, and as I'm driving through nearby intersection I recognized, a truck ran a red light and hit me." Now, her car is still at the pump without a scratch on it. She goes on to say she remembers her car being pushed into a pole, going airborne, and then nothing. I tried to calm her down, letting her know that her car is out front and it looks just fine. But she insisted that she completely blacked out, woke up in an ambulance for a split second, passed out again, and then woke up again in the driver's seat of her car, at the intersection, waiting for the light to change, and feeling physically perfectly fine. This whole thing freaked her out so badly that she drove to the nearest anything, us, just so she could get out of the car. The husband eventually showed up to get her. He asked if I have any idea what happened, and even though she sort of explained to me, I just shrugged because, no, I had no idea what was happening anymore. She reluctantly got into the passenger seat of the car, and he drove them back home. That was hours ago, after which I worked an entire shift at the station trying to wrap my head around what the absolute hell I had just witnessed. Personal thoughts. This is frequently the case in all of the quantum immortality glitches. Honestly, at this point, it's such a common experience that I just want to call it a feature of reality, where the person who dies remembers that they died, how they died, even the sounds, smells, the pain involved. One story, remember there was a crash, the person felt their bones shatter. That's disconcerting to be sure. So it's like our soul transposes into an alternate reality and survives there, but brings with it the memories from the reality that they came from, even up to their death. It's just incredible to think about, really. I'm not exactly religious either, honestly. When I say soul, I mean in a spiritual context, like an inexplicable context. It's like trying to find a word really that is more like our essence, the core of what we are. Are we just meat and bones, or is there more to us? It's that mental exercise thinking, who were we and how did we come to be before we existed, before we were born? Because in that state of nothingness, really, what is that? It'd be the same thing as dying. You would return to that same nothingness, if there really is a nothingness. Maybe it really is just reincarnation in a sense, but jumping from reality to reality that most closely matches ours. Or maybe it's just our base code being uploaded to a new server. 19th Story. Story title. Mom and I have the same memory, and no idea where it came from. Author name. Throwaway 17. My mom and I aren't very close. We pretty much live totally separate lives, except for living in a house together. One day, my car was at the mechanic's, so she drove me to work, and we were talking about whatever. One of the streetlights was broken, so it was flashing red, and for some reason, that made me remember being in a crowded room, sitting at a long table, when all of a sudden the lights went out in the room, and everyone started panicking. I said, "Weird." That made me remember being in a crowded room, and everyone started panicking because the lights went out. And my mom responds that she remembers the same thing, now that I mention it. But the thing is, we have no idea at all where we would have been. We don't really ever go anywhere together, and I can't even remember the last time I went to a big event like that. It was a long, feast-like table, and totally packed with people sitting and standing around, like a big celebratory dinner or something like that. And neither of us have any memory before or after, just this specific moment of the light shutting off, and everyone gasping and talking about it. I know it's nothing big, but it keeps me up at night sometimes. Where the hell were we? And why is that our only memory of it? Personal thoughts. To me, this sounds clearly like a suppressed memory. I have heard of memories being deliberately supplanted. Aliens, of course. But also we ourselves can suppress them subconsciously without even realizing that we did so, if the event was traumatic enough. In a sense, it's like our mind trying to protect itself, or the conscious layer. Almost like the parent shielding the kid from too much trauma, or the harsh reality of the world. But then it might even be a false memory suppression. That is to say, the table you remember might not be real, though I suspect the other people around it were, the other abduction victims. I can't say for certain, but I think that's what happened, because your mom also remembers it exactly the same way. 20th Story. Story title: Time Traveling Salmon. Author name: Dragon Cat 99. Okay, I know the title sounds like a terrible punchline, but hear me out. A while back I opened the fridge and saw a container of salmon. It was just a little bit of salmon, smashed into the corner of a huge container. I had looked in the fridge earlier and hadn't seen it, despite its size. I opened it and it smelled rancid, so I just threw it out. This was really weird for a few reasons. Our family rarely eats seafood, and whenever we do, it's a big deal. We'll get the fish fresh caught from somewhere fancy like Whole Foods, and have it for a sit-down dinner. That hadn't happened for a long time though. My brother might have gotten canned or frozen salmon to eat, but he wouldn't have put it away, and if Mom put it away, it wouldn't be in such an oversized container. Not to mention the fact that this salmon had clearly been in there a long time, despite only appearing that day. I mentioned all this to my mom, but she just shrugged it off. Fast forward a week or so. Mom goes into town and buys salmon for dinner. We eat it, but we have a ton of leftovers. Mom gets out her big container, the same one I had found the old salmon in. The container is just about the right size for this amount of leftovers. It sits in the fridge for a week, and we chip away at it until there's just a little left, smashed into the corner. I noticed the similarities building, and pointed out to my mom, and she just laughed and thought I was crazy. The salmon sits there several more days. It's in that state where no one's sure if it's good anymore, but they're scared to open it to smell it, and everyone's sick of salmon. But no one wants to throw it out in case it's still good and someone wants it. You know how that goes. One day, the salmon disappeared. I expected the container to be in the dirty dishes, but I couldn't find it. It hadn't been put away either. I asked my mom about it, and she says she didn't throw it out. Me and my mom are the only ones who would have thrown it out, and neither of us remembered doing so. The container's still missing. Personal thoughts. Yep, this would mess with my head. Actually, the most potent factor here to me is the container that's missing. Sure, you could say that was just history repeating, even though your family doesn't like seafood much, but who'd throw out the entire container? What a fun little glitch this was. But do let us know if you find the container. 21st Story. Story title. I literally just experienced the glitch in the Matrix. Author name: Problematic Pink. Okay, so about a half an hour ago, I was downstairs outside my house talking on the phone with my friend. The conversation went on for about 15 minutes before we said goodnight and hung up the phone. I stayed outside just for 5 more minutes because it was really nice, and to be quite honest, I was finishing a smoke. But anyway, I go back inside and I was chilling on my couch watching TV. Eventually I go upstairs. I'm still on my phone, chilling in my room, listening to the quiet music, when I hear a voice outside my window. It sounded like a girl was on the phone. So me, being the nosy one I am, went to open the window just to listen a little while I was on my phone. I turned my music off, and then I got up and opened the window. Then I went back to sit on my bed. But after only a few moments, I realized this girl was having almost the exact same conversation as I was with my friend. So I was like, what the heck is going on? I got up and looked out the window, and I kid you not, it was me on the phone. It was me talking to my friend, and I couldn't understand what I was seeing. I just froze and I was like, what the hell? I waited for a minute to see if I was 100% certain of what I was seeing, and I noticed the red shoes the girl was wearing, along with the long black coat. I was wearing the exact same thing. I was impossibly freaked out when she turned around and looked at me. When I was on my phone before, I did look up to my window just to see if the lights were on, and it wasn't, which is what I think the girl that was me was looking for, if that makes sense. So totally bamboozled, I ran downstairs and out of the door, and surely enough, she was gone. Or I was gone. I don't know, I'm really freaking out. Does anyone have some kind of explanation for this? I'm 100% certain it wasn't just someone that looked a lot like me. This was me. I also want to add that I don't do drugs of any sort, and I was not tripping. If there's anyone who can give me some kind of explanation, that would be amazing. I didn't post this for jokes and gags. I'm genuinely concerned, confused, befuddled. And it's not like I can Google something like this for answers. Personal thoughts. Okay, so do you have any friends that look like you? The only quote-unquote logical, or rather to say mundane explanation, would be that one of your friends decided to mind prank you. But usually that doesn't seem likely, especially if they never confess to you that's what they did. I mean, a prank's only good for the reactions, but you want to confess. You want to make sure they don't think they're crazy. So to me it seems like a ripple in time. You somehow witness your past self from a few minutes ago as you came in, until the timelines merge back together somehow. I wonder how this works in a physical sense. Say, you are on your phone talking with someone else, but there's a duplicate signal, then by your timeline clone, occupying the same timeline as you, would the cell phone tower recognize both signals? Or is it that you're more perceiving the past version of yourself, but they aren't actually occupying the same timeline? I guess that makes more sense, since when you went out to check on her, or you, she was gone. I don't know, very curious though. Like I've been saying a lot this year, there's been a lot of weird stuff going on, and a lot of perception glitches. For timelines, for alternate dimensions, I have no idea what's going on, but it does make for good story. 22nd Story. Story title. Last night, I kept driving back to the same church over and over again. Author name: T-Rex 1993. So this happened late last night. I'm from Texas, the Gulf Coast, and I drove out to the beachside last night to enjoy the wind from Hurricane Delta. Before I was about to drive back home, I noticed these two neighborhoods separated by a main road that were the polar opposite of each other. One was very poor, and the other one was clearly very rich. Now, I have a weird obsession with architecture and houses, and often drive through interesting looking neighborhoods to check out the houses in my free time, so I thought I'd check out these two neighborhoods out, just out of my curiosity. Now somehow, as soon as I started driving through them, I'd lose my memory and sense of direction, and just start circling around with no aim. I was definitely not drunk or under the influence of any drug, so I have no idea why this was happening. And every time I'd get lost, I just kept coming back around to this huge church/cathedral. This happened about 3 or 4 times with one of the neighborhoods. So I thought maybe it's just a weird thing in my brain, where it's remembering what street I drove through last time, and because I'm lost, it's automatically making me drive through the same street and making me come back to the same spot. So I thought if I changed the neighborhood, it'd stop doing it. So I went over to the other neighborhood and started driving through, and lo and behold, I lost my sense of direction and started circling around until I ended up in the same church again, and again, and again. I think I counted a total of 6 times before it happened, before I got freaked out and frustrated and just went back home. Oh, and to make matters even freakier, the winds messed up the lights around the church, and they were flickering like those out of a horror movie. It was probably the weirdest thing I've ever experienced in my life. Here are some pictures. Personal thoughts. This feels spiritual. Some kind of fog in your brain directing or even pushing you back to that church. When you were driving around, do you remember if you tried to or even were able to look around to keep track of the road names? Also, maybe if you can, you could even go back during the day and ask the locals to see, well, has anyone else experienced anything like that? Maybe they have. My impression is that some entity wanted you to be there, to go inside the church, because that's where you were drawn to again and again and again. I'm also wondering why. Maybe some crime happened there that night. Maybe someone needed help. I don't know, but that's a really creepy story. Final story. Story title: Possible Glitch in the Matrix. Author name: Liza Bug 96. So roughly a year ago, my husband and I were driving home on a route we've used for years now. It was around 9 or 10 p.m. and we didn't have children then. Plus it was a weekend, so we had slept in that morning, so we know we weren't tired at all. Neither my husband nor myself drink or do any drugs, so we can't attribute this experience to that either. I myself am a huge skeptic in all things related to simulations, aliens, ghosts, you name it. However, I just can't shake this incident. My husband and I had just turned off the highway and into a small town that borders us. We have a habit of taking back roads, and had just started going over the bridge to head home, when the most bizarre thing occurred. My husband and I were driving in comfortable silence, staring forward, when suddenly everything slowed down, and the road in front of us lifted up and then started flipping over, before quickly fighting itself and going back to normal. I was completely taken aback and looked to my husband, thinking I was going crazy, until he asked if I had just witnessed what he did, and then he started describing the same thing I had just witnessed. I'm not sure what to make of the incident, and thought to post here, just to see what you guys thought. Personal thoughts. Wow, that is a weird event. So, you say that things slowed down. Do you mean your perception of time, or just the car itself, or both? And then the road in front of you lifted up. This was a back road, but it was still asphalt, right? Not dirt? Did you happen to get out of the car and go inspect the road where it started lifting up? If so, did you notice any cracks in it, or was it still seamless, like nothing had happened at all? I know if this happened to me while I was alone, I would genuinely think I'd gone mad. I'm glad you had your husband with you, so at least you both know your sanity is intact. As far as theories go, I could always say, well, this kinda seems like an alien abduction, because time distortion seems to be involved. But normally people don't have false memories. They just can't remember what happened. And also there's always time distortion, not just perceptually, but when you return from whatever happened, time has moved forward. Did you notice any loss of time, or was it still the same time after? I don't know if you remember that detail, but it could be an important clue. If time was normal for you after, if you weren't gone for longer than a minute, well then, it probably wasn't an alien abduction. But then I have no idea what it would be. Very strange indeed. And that concludes our stories for the night. I know you loved it, so hit that like button and subscribe on up. I upload Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'll see you all there.